several hypotheses have emerged to explain the global warming phenomenon. Among these theories, anthropogenic global warming (AG) has emerged as the leading theory, which deduces that the Earth is warming due to human activity and that as a result humans will eventually destroy the planet. The AG theory has permeated nearly every facet of modern society. Over the past few decades, scientists, politicians, marketers, and Earth lovers alike, for various reasons, have employed propaganda techniques to promote the anthropogenic global warming theory. In the process, they proactively sought to curtail the exposure of the truth in order to profit from people's apprehension of global warming. Fears of the Earth's rising temperature are based on global temperature averages over the past 100 years, with special interest placed on the past decade. During the mid-1800s, the average surface temperature varied but was close to 4 degrees Celsius. Contrasting the older temperatures with today's average of 4 degrees Celsius, a difference of nearly 8 degrees C, has alarmed many and caused others to investigate the reasons for the perceived increase in temperature. Propaganda techniques scholars have written volumes explaining the techniques and methodology of propagandists for hundreds of years. To propagandize, one need only read a manual to learn the concepts of an effectively run propaganda campaign. Propaganda techniques include appealing to fear, appealing to authority, name-calling, transference, bandwagoning, obtaining disapproval, oversimplification, utilizing virtue words, employing faulty logic and more. AG proponents utilize all of these methods to further their goals, which will be discussed later. Appealing to fear is perhaps the strongest technique used by propagandists. Hitler's propaganda minister, Goebbels, exploited and motivated the German population by striking fear into them. Likewise, propagandists have attempted to use the fear factor to get the media's attention and gain front-page real estate. Headlines such as "Scientists fear global warming higher than expected" are designed to make the audience cringe with fear when they read that Earth's average temperature could rise by 7.8 degrees Celsius by 2300. With polar ice caps melting and seas rising by 7 meters. 3 Nearly every report concerning global warming is laced with calamitous consequences if something is not done soon. This type of propaganda is effective in catching readers' attention and motivating them to some action. In the early stages of AG propaganda, global warming fears dominated public consciousness. Later, beginning in 1998, the Earth began to cool while atmospheric carbon dioxide continued to rise in complete contradiction to the theory. As a result, the phraseology of AG alarmists became climate change so that any variation in the Earth's climate could then be attributed to human activities. For the problems with the scare tactic is that eventually people become immune to the warnings, prompting the AG propaganda engine to produce more extreme warnings. John Rich, Director General of the World Nuclear Association, provided an excellent example of upping the fear factor. In June 2007, greenhouse gas emissions, if continued at the present massive scale, will yield consequences that are, quite literally, apocalyptic. If these predictions hold true, the combined effect would be the death of not just millions but of billions of people and the destruction of much of civilization on all continents. 5. At some point, propagandists will be forced to rely on other tools of propaganda as appealing to fear will eventually lose effectiveness. AG propagandists do not rely solely on fear to influence the masses, however, and appeal to authority is a common technique. By invoking the infallible name of science, advocates can point to others who have advanced degrees and use scientific jargon to impress and beguile the masses. Because the average citizen does not have the time or resources to conduct her own study of the warming phenomenon, she is forced to rely on the opinions of those scientific authorities, who on their own can readily cite hard numbers and create computer models to evaluate and project the future. Appealing to authority alleviates the average citizen of this academic burden. Authoritative sources include dictionaries, which have become a tool of the propagandist. American Heritage Science Dictionary gives the following definition for global warming: an increase in the average temperature of the Earth's atmosphere, especially a sustained increase great enough to cause changes in the global climate. The Earth has experienced numerous episodes of global warming through its history, and currently appears to be undergoing such warming. The present warming is generally attributed to an increase in the greenhouse effect, brought about by increased levels of greenhouse gases, largely due to the effects of human industry and agriculture. Expected long-term effects of current global warming are rising sea levels, flooding, melting of polar ice caps and glaciers, fluctuations in temperature and precipitation, more frequent and stronger El Niños and La Niñas, drought, heat waves, and forest fires. 6. Authoritative sources employ several other types of propaganda techniques, many of which overlap. The above appeal to authority includes the tactic of fear and faulty logic, using seemingly contradicting predictions concurrently. How can a worldwide drought simultaneously be accompanied by flooding and melting of landlocked glaciers? Contradictory statements by some authoritative sources seek to lend credibility to the ag argument by oversimplifying the theory, yet making it confusing enough for the average citizen to leave in the hands of experts. Name-calling is usually reserved for politically minded individuals and those audiences predisposed to agree with the one presenting the message. Words such as right-wing or ultra-conservative contain such a built-in prejudice that when an author utilizes them to describe an opponent of ag, the same prejudices are transferred to that individual regardless of the opponent's political leanings. Name-calling will often be invoked attacking the person, rather than the idea being presented. Kevin Trenberth, a prominent climate researcher, became frustrated during a conference on global warming when challenged by Colorado State University's William Gray, one of the nation's preeminent hurricane forecasters, and said that Dr. Gray is not a credible scientist, not anymore. He was at one time, but he's not anymore. 7. Name-calling attempts to discredit individuals and the ideas they represent is unprofessional, and unfortunately, individuals on both sides of the ag theory engage in it. Additionally, name-calling is often applied to naturally occurring molecules in nature. Carbon dioxide is regularly labeled as a pollutant, something that is essential for plant life and, subsequently, all life. Labeling those who disagree with ag as less than educated or ignorant stifles scientific thought and academic deliberation, favoring the pro-ag theorists. Further, attempting to categorize carbon dioxide as a pollutant wrongly demonizes nearly every oxygen-breathing carbon dioxide-emitting organism, but primarily places the blame on humans who release carbon dioxide in the air when burning fossil fuels. Additionally, placing carbon dioxide in the category of pollutant emphasizes, as many ag supporters do, that it is a major greenhouse gas, which it is not. Water vapor, the primary greenhouse gas, may soon be targeted and placed on the list of pollutants. Proponents of ag engage in a propaganda technique known as transfer. Transfer occurs when the positive or negative traits of one thing or person are associated with that of another. For example, when the supporter of ag addresses a television audience, he wears a white lab coat, whether or not he works in a lab, because people associate white lab coats with scientists and truth untainted. Conversely, when interviewing a skeptic of ag, the deft ag reporter will find a suitable candidate among a Texas oil town or a steel worker in Detroit. In each case, the viewer will associate a negative or positive image of the person speaking with what he or she is presenting. A vivid illustration of transfer is the attack by Ben Stewart of Greenpeace on the American Enterprise Institute, the primary think tank that opposes the ag theory. Stewart says, the A is more than just a think tank. It functions as the Bush administration's intellectual Cosa Nostra. 8. By equating the A to the mafia. Ben Stewart attempts to transfer the negative feelings and images of the terrorist criminal organization to that of the A and President Bush simultaneously. He engages in name-calling to discredit the A. Mr. Stewart does not attack the concepts presented by A or any of the rationale behind their objections to ag. He attacks those funding the organization and appeals to outside organizations predisposed to bias. Bandwagoning and polarization go hand in hand. The propagandist will attempt to simplify the issue, presenting only two extreme options. You can either pollute, drive big SUVs, burn coal and waste energy, or you can join the eco-friendly, caring people who want to preserve the earth for future generations, which is what every other responsible person is doing. These techniques are highly effective, because while one may not completely agree with what is presented, It is easier to go along with what everyone else is doing. Thousands of scientists and millions of other people can't be wrong. Human activity has borne the bulk of the blame for the increased temperatures. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change (IPCC), established by the United Nations to investigate the impact human activity has on the global climate, while recognizing other factors that influence the climate, attributes the majority of global warming to human activity. 1. Human activity includes land clearing, industrial emissions and transportation emissions, which increase greenhouse gases and aerosols. The IPCC, the chief promoter of ag, identified that the primary cause of increased temperatures worldwide is human-related carbon dioxide emissions from fossil-burning fuels. The IPCC recently published dire worldwide predictions based on their global warming calculations. While supporters of the ag theory often quote other sources, the IPCC is generally recognized as the most authoritative body on the subject. Their report concludes that the increasing global temperatures will cause ocean levels to rise and the water to become more acidic. The confident estimates predict that precipitation, wind, and ice will change as well, although there is no consensus on their magnitude. 2. The IPCC deftly presents all of the calculations, though nearly each one contains a caveat explaining that the models employed are lacking significant data or the phenomenon is too complex to accurately model.